What if I told you that the most expensive piece of gear in your ice fishing sled is probably the biggest reason you're going home with an empty bucket? Sounds crazy, right? You spent hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars on that state-of-the-art fish finder. It's supposed to be your eyes under the ice. But today, we're going to talk about why, in the dead of winter, it often does more harm than good. I'm going to show you the critical mistakes almost everyone makes and reveal the cold, hard truth about what your sonar is really showing you. The answer isn't about buying a new transducer or a fancier model. It's about understanding how the fish, the water, and the physics of sound all change when the lake gets a lid on it. This video will change the way you look at that screen forever. So let me ask you, do you trust your electronics 100%? Or do you think there's still a place for old-fashioned fish sense? Let me know down in the comments before we get started. Let's be honest, we live in a golden age of fishing technology. For open water fishing, a good fish finder is like a superpower. It shows you structure, it marks bait balls, it paints a perfect picture of what's happening 100 feet down. We've learned to trust it implicitly. When you see a big arch on the screen in July, you know a fish is there. You drop your line, you get a bite. It's a system that works. So naturally, when the ice comes, we take that same piece of equipment, that same faith in technology, and we bring it out onto the hard water. We expect it to work the same way. We expect it to give us the same clear, reliable information. But that's the first and biggest mistake. Winter fishing isn't just colder summer fishing. It's a completely different sport played by different rules. The fish are different. Their metabolism is different. Their behavior is different. And the medium your sonar is traveling through, that cold, dense, often stratified water, is also completely different. The faith that served you so well in the summer becomes a blind spot in the winter. First, let's tackle the most common frustration, the myth of the empty screen. You get to your spot, you drill a hole, you drop the transducer, and you seize nothing, just the bottom. So you pull up and move 10 feet, drill again, still nothing. After an hour of this, you're convinced the lake is a barren wasteland. But here's the truth. In winter, fish, especially species like walleye and perch, conserve energy by becoming almost one with the bottom. They'll lay so tight to the mud or sand that your fish finder, with its standard settings, can't distinguish them from the bottom return itself. The sonar pulse hits the fish and the bottom at nearly the same instant, and your unit's software just blends it all into a single thick bottom line. You're looking for a distinct mark floating an inch or two off the bottom, but the fish is literally a part of that bottom line. Imagine trying to spot a brown wallet on a muddy floor from 10 feet away. It's there, but it blends in perfectly. That's what's happening on your screen. You're drilling holes right on top of fish, looking at them on your screen, and leaving because you think it's an empty spot. So, how do you find those bottom huggers? This brings us to the second major failure point, misinterpreting what a fish actually looks like in winter. You have to stop looking for those big, beautiful arches you see in the summer. A lethargic winter walleye isn't going to paint a masterpiece on your screen. Instead, you need to train your eye to look for the thin red line. You need to zoom in on the bottom 2 or 3 feet of the water column and crank up your sensitivity. Watch the very top edge of that thick bottom reading. Is it perfectly flat and consistent? Or is there a very thin, maybe slightly different colored line right on top of it? That's your fish. It might just be a pixel or two thick. Sometimes as your jig gets close, this thin line might flicker or separate from the bottom by a hair. That's your signal. Most anglers, conditioned by summer fishing, completely ignore this. Their brain is trained to filter it out as just part of the bottom. It's like a secret code. Once you learn to see that faint, subtle separation, you'll start realizing that those empty spots you were fishing were actually loaded with fish the entire time. Now, let's talk about fish metabolism. This is a huge one. In the summer, a fish is an aggressive predator. Its metabolism is high, it's constantly hunting, and it's willing to move 5, 10, even 15 feet to chase down a meal. This aggressive movement is what paints those classic arches on your sonar screen. But in winter, that same fish is a completely different animal. Its body temperature is just above freezing, and its metabolism has slowed to a crawl. It's not interested in wasting energy. It's not going to chase your lure up and down the water column like it's a video game. It might move a few inches to inspect your lure, but that's it. So when you're jigging aggressively, trying to draw a fish in from afar, you're often just spooking them or presenting something completely unnatural. The fish sees this frantic thing buzzing around, and it's just not interested. You see a mark on your screen, you jig like a maniac, the mark disappears, and you assume the fish wasn't biting. The reality is, you scared it away with a presentation that was completely wrong for its slow, lethargic winter mood. This leads directly to another problem: mistaking inactive fish for false signals. Your sonar is incredibly good at one thing: detecting objects of a different density than water. It will show you a fish whether it's actively feeding or practically in a coma. In the winter, fish can remain completely dormant for hours, even days. They're just there. Not feeding, not moving, just existing. Your fish finder will mark them perfectly. You'll see a solid mark sitting there, 2 feet off the bottom. You drop every lure in your box on its head. You try every jigging cadence you know. And you get zero reaction, not even a sniff. After 10 minutes, you conclude that it must be a ghost mark, or a chunk of waterlogged wood, or some kind of interference. You pull up and move, but you just left a perfectly good fish. You made the mistake of assuming that every mark you see is a fish that is ready and willing to bite. In winter, that's simply not true. Your finder tells you where they are, but it tells you nothing about their mood. The failure isn't the technology. It's our expectation that every fish we see should be an aggressive one. Let's get a bit technical and talk about cone angles, because this is a trap that snares so many anglers. Most transducers have a cone-shaped beam that widens as it goes deeper. Imagine an invisible ice cream cone under your hole. A wide cone angle is great for searching, as it covers a larger area of the bottom. But it's also incredibly deceptive. Let's say you're in 20 feet of water with a wide cone. That cone could be 8 or 10 feet wide at the bottom. Your fish finder picks up a fish on the outer edge of that cone, 8 feet away from your hole. You see the mark on your screen and get excited. You drop your tiny ice jig straight down. But your jig is 8 feet away from the fish. The fish has no idea your lure is even there. You're seeing a fish on the screen, but you're not fishing to it. It's like seeing a deer 100 yards away and trying to hit it by throwing a rock. You're in the right general area, but you're completely missing the target. This happens constantly. Anglers spend hours jigging to fish that are on their screen, but are nowhere near their bait, all because they don't understand the cone angle deception. Naturally, the solution to the wide cone problem seems simple. Just switch to a narrow cone, right? Well, that creates a whole new problem: the narrow cone blind spot. A narrow cone is fantastic for precision. It shows you exactly what is directly under your hole. If you see a fish, you know your lure is right in its face. This is great for confirming a fish's presence once you've found a school. But for searching, it's a disaster. In that same 20 feet of water, your narrow cone might only be 2 or 3 feet wide at the bottom. You could be just 1 foot away from a massive school of crappie or a giant walleye, and your screen will be completely blank. You're looking through a toilet paper tube while the party is happening just outside your field of view. So you drill a hole, scan with your narrow beam, see nothing, and move on, leaving the mother lode just inches away. The key is knowing when to use each cone. You search with the wide beam to find fish, then you switch to the narrow beam to zero in and fish for them effectively. Most anglers just pick one and stick with it. which means they're either fishing where the fish aren't, or they're missing the fish entirely. Another classic mistake is ignoring the noise. When we set up our fish finders, we're often obsessed with getting a clean screen. We turn on noise rejection filters and turn down the sensitivity until all the little flickers and static disappear, leaving only big, clear marks. We think we're being smart, eliminating interference. But in the winter, that noise is often where the money is. Those tiny, barely there flickers near the bottom aren't interference. That's a school of perch. That cloud of faint fuzz you filtered out? That's a pod of baitfish, which is a dinner invitation for bigger predators. By trying to get a pretty clean picture, we are literally erasing the most important information from the screen. You have to learn to love a messy screen in the winter. Turn your sensitivity way up until the screen is full of clutter, then slowly dial it back just enough so you can distinguish your lure. You need to see everything: the tiny plankton, the small baitfish, the subtle changes in bottom density. The story of what's happening under the ice is written in that clutter, and most fishermen are throwing the book away before they even read the first page. Now for a really weird one, the ghost fish phenomenon. This is where your finder marks a fish clear as day, but there's absolutely nothing there. It's not a bottom hugger, it's not an inactive fish, it's a literal phantom. This is often caused by a thermocline or other density layers in the water. Cold water isn't uniform. You can have layers of slightly different temperatures or densities stacked on top of each other. When your sonar pulse hits the boundary between these layers, it can reflect back to the transducer, which interprets it as an object. It can create a perfect-looking arch or a solid line on your screen that looks exactly like a suspended crappie or a cruising walleye. You can spend half an hour fishing for this ghost, getting more and more frustrated. The key to spotting this is to watch your lure. If your lure passes right through the mark on your screen without the two lines ever meeting or interacting, you're likely fishing a temperature break, not a fish. It's a frustrating part of winter sonar use, but understanding that it happens can save you a ton of wasted time. Let's talk about what happens before you even drop the transducer in the hole. The noise. Think about the process. You're walking on a thick sheet of ice, which transmits sound and vibration incredibly well. Then you fire up a gas or electric auger, which is basically a giant blender chewing through the ice. To the fish below, this is a massive, terrifying event. It's like a helicopter landing on your roof. Some curious fish, like pike, might come in to investigate the commotion, but many others, especially wary walleye or trout, will either bolt from the area or hunker down and go into high alert mode, refusing to bite. The biggest mistake anglers make is drilling a hole and immediately dropping their transducer to look for fish. If you see nothing, you might assume it's a dead spot. But the fish might just be spooked and hiding 30 feet away, or they might be hunkered on the bottom, refusing to move for the next 20 minutes. You have to give the spot time to settle down. Drill your holes, then go grab a coffee for 15 or 20 minutes. Let the fish relax and return to their normal patterns before you start scanning. Patience after the drill is a virtue that few anglers practice. This is a simple one, but it trips up so many people. Transducer angle. On a boat, your transducer is mounted in a fixed position. It's always pointing straight down. Under the ice, it's a different story. You drop your transducer into a hole that's full of ice slush, and it's floating on a little arm or cord. It's very easy for it to be hanging at a slight angle instead of being perfectly level. You might not even notice it, but even a 5-degree tilt can have a massive impact. In 30 feet of water, that slight angle means your sonar cone is now centered several feet away from your hole. It's the same problem as the wide cone angle deception, but even worse because you think you're looking straight down. You see a fish on the screen, but it's actually 10 feet to your left. Your lure is in one spot, and your sonar is looking at another. A simple way to check this is to watch your lure on the screen as you lower it. Does it stay in the center of the display? Or does it appear on one side and then disappear? If it's not tracking dead center, your transducer is tilted. Taking 10 seconds to make sure it's hanging perfectly level can be the difference between fishing effectively and fishing in a completely dead zone. Technology can be a double-edged sword, and that's especially true with GPS. We have these amazing lake maps with 1-foot contours. They show us every point, every drop-off, every inside turn. So we motor out to a spot that looks perfect on the map, a classic winter holding area. We trust the GPS implicitly. We drill our holes exactly where the little boat icon tells us to. The problem is, we start trusting the map more than what our sonar is telling us in real time. Maybe the map says this is the sharpest point of the drop-off, but your sonar shows it's actually a gentle slope. Or the map shows a hard bottom, but your finder is showing you mud. You ignore the real-time information from your sonar because you have blind faith in the map. You sit there for hours, convinced this is the spot, even when your electronics are screaming that there is no bait, no structure, and no fish. The map is a guide to get you to the general area, but your fish finder is what gives you the ground truth. Ignoring it in favor of a preloaded map is a recipe for a long, cold, fishless day. One of the biggest modern failures is what I call the video game mindset. With live forward-facing sonar, this is especially bad, but it happens with traditional flashers and graphs too. We get completely mesmerized by the screen. We watch our little lure line go down, we see a fish line appear, and our entire focus shifts to making those two lines intersect. We're not fishing anymore, we're playing a video game. Our goal becomes beat the game by making the fish bite the glowing dot on the screen. We stop paying attention to the real world. We stop feeling the line for those incredibly subtle winter bites. We stop noticing how the rod tip loads up almost imperceptibly. A winter walleye can inhale and spit out a minnow without creating a flicker on the most sensitive sonar. The only indication is a slight feeling of weight or mushiness on your line. But if you're staring at the screen, waiting for a big red line to crash into your jig, you will miss that bite 100% of the time. The fish finder is a tool to find fish, not a tool to detect bites. Your rod and your hands are for that. Let's talk about settings, specifically gain and sensitivity. This is where most people get it completely wrong. They either leave it on the auto setting or they use the same high gain settings that worked for them in the summer. Both are terrible for ice fishing. The auto setting on most units is designed for open water. It's programmed to filter out clutter and show you distinct targets. As we've already discussed, in winter, the clutter is the target. Auto will literally make fish and bait invisible. On the other hand, just cranking the gain to maximum is also wrong. This can create so much noise and blow out the signal so much that you can't distinguish a fish from the bottom or a fish from your lure. The key is manual adjustment. Start with the gain very low and slowly turn it up until you can clearly see your smallest ice jig. Then, turn it up just a little bit more. You want it to be on the verge of being too hot. This will give you the detail you need to see those bottom huggers and subtle baitfish schools without creating a screen full of meaningless static. It's a delicate balance that auto mode just can't handle. Here's a feature on every modern graph that almost no ice angler uses correctly: the history or scroll back. With a traditional flasher, you're only seeing a real-time snapshot of what's directly under you at that exact second. If a fish swims through and you blink, you miss it. But with an LCD graph, you have a history of the last 30 seconds or minutes scrolling across your screen. This is an incredibly powerful tool. A wary fish might not sit directly under your hole. It might just cruise through the very edge of your sonar cone for a split second. In real time, it's just a momentary blip that you might dismiss. But on the history screen, you can see it clear as day. You can see a faint line appeared for 2 seconds and then vanished. That's your clue. That tells you a fish is in the area and is interested. It tells you to stay put, to be patient, and to change up your presentation. Most anglers are so focused on the right side of the screen, the now, that they completely ignore the left side of the screen, the just happened. The most important clues are often in the past, and ignoring the scrollback is like ignoring footprints in the snow. Let's discuss a sneaky villain that affects every piece of electronics on the ice, the cold itself, and what it does to your batteries. We all know that cold weather is brutal on battery life, but it doesn't just make your battery die faster, it makes it perform worse while it's still alive. A fish finder is a transmitter. It needs a certain amount of power, a certain voltage, to send out a strong, clear sonar pulse. As your battery gets cold and the voltage begins to drop, the power of that pulse weakens. The transducer is not shouting as loud as it should be. As a result, the return signal is also weaker. Your fish finder's brain receives a weaker, muddier signal to interpret. The practical effect is that your sensitivity goes down, you lose target separation, and fish that were clear an hour ago now start to blend into the bottom or disappear entirely. You think the fish have just moved on or the bite has died. But in reality, your fish finder is just getting tired and can't see as well as it did with a full, warm battery. Keeping your battery warm and fully charged is one of the most overlooked aspects of getting accurate sonar readings. We often get tunnel vision when we're ice fishing. We're fishing for walleye, so we stare intently at the bottom 2 feet of the water column. We're fishing for panfish, so we focus on a specific depth where we marked a school. In doing so, we completely forget about the rest of the water column. This is a massive error, especially when it comes to suspended predators. Giant northern pike, lake trout, or even massive walleye will often suspend high in the water column, just a few feet under the ice, to hunt baitfish. But if your sonar is zoomed in on the bottom, you will never, ever see them. They are literally swimming right over your head, completely invisible to you. Every once in a while you need to zoom out and look at the entire water column from the ice to the bottom. You might be shocked to see a massive red line appear just 5 feet down. These are often the biggest, most aggressive fish in the system, and the vast majority of anglers are completely oblivious to their presence because they are too focused on gluing their eyes to the bottom. Let's talk about the mark and move trap. This is a strategy that works well in the summer when you're covering water in a boat, but it's a killer in the winter. Here's how it goes. You drill a hole, you mark a fish, you get excited and drop your lure down. You jig it for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. The fish doesn't react, or maybe it fades away. You instantly assume it's not a biting fish, so you pull up and move to the next hole to find an active one. This is a total failure to understand the winter mood of a fish. A lethargic fish might need to look at your bait for a very long time before committing. 5 minutes of staring is not unusual. It's sizing it up. Its slow brain is processing it. It's waiting for the perfect trigger. That trigger might be a long pause, a tiny little quiver of the bait, or just the passage of time. By leaving after only a minute, you are pulling your lure away from a fish that was very close to biting. You're being too impatient. Once you mark a fish in the winter, you need to commit to that hole for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Give the fish a chance to make up its mind. Here's one that fools even experienced anglers: misidentifying weeds as fish. In the summer, green healthy weeds show up on sonar as a pretty clear solid mass. But in the winter, those weeds are dying or dead. They become less dense and more scattered. A decaying stalk of coontail or milfoil floating a foot off the bottom can give off a sonar return that looks remarkably like a fish. A whole patch of wispy dead weeds can look exactly like a big school of baitfish or crappie. You drill over what looks like a honey hole on your screen. You see marks everywhere. You fish for an hour, trying every lure in your box, and you don't get a single bite. You're left scratching your head, wondering why these fish are so finicky. The truth is, you've just spent an hour meticulously fishing a patch of dead plants. A good way to tell the difference is to use an underwater camera if you have one. But if not, pay attention to the behavior of the marks. Do they move at all? Do they react to your lure? True fish, even inactive ones, will usually show some subtle reaction. Dead weeds will not. Let's wrap up the main section with the most important mistake of all: trusting the screen more than you trust your rod tip. Your fish finder, even the most expensive one, is not a strike indicator. The bite of a winter fish, particularly a perch or a walleye, can be unbelievably light. It's not a tap, tap, tap. Often, it's just a subtle change in pressure. The fish simply swims up and inhales the bait, and the only thing you feel is that your jig suddenly feels a little heavy or mushy as you lift it. There is no tap. There is no pull. The line just goes slightly slack or slightly heavy. This will not register on your sonar. You won't see the fish attack your lure on the screen. You're sitting there, staring at the flasher, waiting for the big visual confirmation of a strike, a confirmation that will never come. Meanwhile, the fish has already had the lure in its mouth and spat it out. You have to learn to treat your fish finder as a tool for location and observation, but your rod is the tool for bite detection. If you can't learn to feel that subtle weight bite while ignoring the screen, you will miss more than half the fish that were willing to eat your offering. So, what is the big takeaway from all of this? Your fish finder isn't intentionally lying to you. It's not broken. It's just speaking a completely different language in the winter, and for years, most of us have been reading it completely wrong. We've been applying summer rules to a winter game. The most shocking part, the real aha moment for me, was realizing that the best ice anglers I know often use their electronics less than everyone else. They use that expensive sonar to find a promising piece of structure or to confirm the presence of bait, and then they often rely on their senses. They trust the feel of their rod more than the flashes on the screen. They understand that the screen shows possibilities, not guarantees. This isn't about telling you to throw your expensive gear in the trash. It's about changing your relationship with it. Stop seeing it as a magic fish-catching machine and start seeing it for what it is, an incredibly powerful tool for gathering clues. Once you make that mental shift, you'll stop chasing ghosts on a screen and start putting more fish on the ice. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this one. If this changed how you look at your sonar, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more no-nonsense fishing advice. Now, I really want to hear from you. After watching this video, what is the one habit or setting you're going to change the next time you use your fish finder on the ice? Let's discuss it in the comments below.